All right. So, so what's the topic you are holding up today?
I made it a little shorter than usual, sir.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So it's a very simple topic. It's the World Cup, basically.
All right. Okay. You
It's
got
just
presentation slides or something?
yeah, it slides.
Okay.
I'll
Take your
pull
time.
it up. I'll
Yeah.
comment.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so today it's a simpler presentation. It's about the FIFA World Cup and it's by me. Okay, so you probably heard the World Cup definitely. You've seen the last the last one was just about 2 months ago. 2.5 months ago, I'd say. That's when the last one, and it was a very good World Cup to me. Yeah, and I followed it very thoroughly throughout the thing, and I saw some of the best matches I've seen in the World Cup. It's a very good competition, and a lot of everyone, even if you don't watch sports typically, everyone typically sees the World Cup or at least hears of it. So like that's like a major thing here. So like what is the World Cup basically? So like the FIFA World Cup it's a football or soccer tournament. Soccer is in the US and Japan also calls it soccer. Like it's not just the US that calls it soccer, but it's in India it's called and most of the world it's football. And it's a competition held every 4 years where national teams compete to win the World Cup trophy. So like it's a major deal with the tour trophy and that, and like it's probably the most prestigious trophy, even more than the Olympic gold medal or 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 like any other trophy you can win. Like it's like the most prestigious of all trophies, and it is the most watched event in the world. So like at least there is an estimated 4 billion people that watched the World Cup up last year, which is half the world basically. So like that is a crazy number. And like over 1.5 billion people watched the World Cup final between Argentina and France in 2022, which is also a very big number of people. So like that is it is the most watched event. Even Olympics doesn't pales in comparison by at least 2 billion views or something, which is crazy to this. Like it's only one sport and it's still getting a lot more. And like 32 teams competed in 2022. So like 32 teams from all over the world. There's a set number of teams from Europe, set number of teams from Asia, set number of teams in Africa, and so on and so on. And like it's like that. That then like it's basically those 32 teams will compete and they try to make it so that the countries that are not in the same continent will not compete against each other. Like Asian countries will not compete against other Asian countries, at least in the group stage, and then knockout stage it's obviously variable, but like in the group stage where teams get to start, it's not that. And like the exception here is Europe, because like Europe typically has a lot of good professional football organizations, and like they won on a lot of the World Cups. Like they are sometimes you may see Europe having two teams in the same group, but like that's the only thing because it typically is the numbers there. And like it's set to expand to 48 in 2026. So like 2026, the World Cup is actually gonna be in the United States and Canada, which is gonna be interesting. And 48 teams will be. So like it's expanding even more. Like when it started, it was only 12 teams, I think, maybe 16, probably 16 teams, and then it slowly expanded to 24, or I think in the 1980s, and then like it went to the 32 teams in 1998. And only eight countries have been world champions, even though it's been over 24 tournaments now, only eight countries have ever gotten the trophy so far. So I'm like, yeah, so like the first World Cup you can see in the bottom right, it was in Uruguay, and it wasn't really a thing. Like FIFA just started out, it was a brand new thing. So like not a lot of countries participated, but still football was gaining popularity throughout the world. And then like they decided to make a tournament, and then they didn't realize that this tournament would go into become one of the largest things. And like now Qatar even is hosting it in 2022, even though Qatar is not like a footballing nation at all. Like in their performance against the World Cup, they lost every single game by at least 2 goals. So like, yeah. And like this is the World Cup best result map. So like this is like countries by best result. So like you can see the countries that are champions, like Brazil, Argentina, France. Those are all are expected. And then like there's some other countries here as well. And like some countries even for getting into the World Cup, they make it a big deal. Like it's like for example, like people Panama, you may not even know it's a country, but like and like I'll point to it, it's right there. In 2018, they made into World Cup, and and everyone was going crazy in that country just because, and they scored a goal, and it's a crazy thing. So like that, and like I should have made it a little more or the color. Yeah, now you can see Panama there. So like it's a small country, but like they made a big deal about it, and like and go even more. Like Morocco this year was very crazy and got fourth place in the World Cup. It's the highest for any African team. Even like that's crazy. And like lots of countries supported Morocco from Africa and the Middle East, all of them supported it. So like it's like a world thing, even if you get into the World Cup, and like it's not even, and although every country wants to be a champion, there's only so much you can do. And like yeah, and I mean India, you may you may see India, it's surprising here. Like India, it's not a big surprise that they didn't qualify for any World Cups, though they did qualify for one in 1950. And like they were actually football was actually really good in India. India was actually one of pretty good football team in 1950, and they got into the World Cup. However, because the World Cup rules, they were trying to India was more a barefoot soccer, meaning they played with barefoot, where FIFA moved on to like more cleats and like those soccer shoes which are required, and like India didn't like that. And also like travel costs were too much for the Indian team. It wasn't really organized. They didn't have a good organization of a football nation unlike other countries. So like they couldn't. But it would have been interesting if India made it in the 1950s, if they actually made it gone to the World Cup. And like yeah, it just slowly expanded into something in Beijing. Like this and like a decent number of the world now has gone into the World Cup, and decent number came pretty close. So and we'll talk about those next. And so countries with the most championships. So like Brazil is the most championships at 5 World Cups. And like they're also the only country to qualify for every World Cup. So like before, in order to know the whether the 38, I mean 32 or 48 teams that are to compete, like they hold qualifiers throughout the world. So like it's like typically it doesn't get as much attention, but like it's really important for to get into the World Cup up. So like FIFA will every like continent will have a different and set of rules on how to qualify for the World Cup. So like that is the thing. But either way, Brazil qualified for every World Cup. It appeared in every World Cup since 1930, and like there are some World Cups that it did, and like the only two who that it didn't attend that wasn't there because the World Cup was canceled was in 1942 and 1946. So like those 2 years, it was World War II, and like a lot of the world is in conflict, and it's similar to the Olympic Games were also canceled, although typically in wartime. So like it's to follow that procedure. So like that's like the only 2 years you expect the World Cup that didn't, and like Brazil came to every other year, and then Germany, Italy came at 4, or World Cup wins, and then Argentina at three. It's also the most recent one at 2022 it won, and then Uruguay, France. France won the 2018 one, and then England and Spain got one. And then that's it, eight countries. And then countries that came close to winning, Netherlands and Croatia are the main two. Your Netherlands came second in 2010 and third in 2014. So like those are so it's a very close, very close. It was very close to winning. It was very competitive finals and games it was playing, and like it nearly beat the Argentina as well this in 2022. That was Netherlands versus Argentina. Besides the World Cup, Argentina versus France, that World Cup final, it was probably the second best game in the World Cup that year. In that year, it was a really good tight game, and they both teams played well. And then Croatia, they came third this year, and then like or last year, but like yeah, and then like they came second in 2018. It was a surprise team that came up suddenly, and like no one expected it. But like Croatia had a very good football organization, and they were close in a lot of years to win, and like that was a surprise. So they were really close to winning, and best players in the World Cup. This is the final slide. So like let's there's a lot of great plays in the World Cup. However, I can only include so much here. So like currently Lionel Messi is probably the best player right now in the world. He just got awarded the FIFA best player of 2023, which is something, and like it's obviously deserved. He won the World Cup in 2022 last year. He played very well. He was even at an old age, 35 years old. That is a very old age for football. He still played very well. Well, and he got Argentina in. And then Kylian Mbappe, he's the younger one, and like he's probably the most rising star. As soon as Messi retires, he's probably gonna be the best player in the world. And like he got three goals in a World Cup final match, which is crazy. And like he also played, and like he was just saw how good he was, and like he basically helped France to be very competitive against Argentina on that game. And then Luka Modric is Croatia. He's the third. He was also that he was seen as a really good player even before Croatia became well known in the world for football. But like he captained it, and like he was overall just a solid player overall. He was both good at defense and offense. He was a great midfielder, and he was overall, and he got third place in the thing. So like he was the third best player, and Mbappe was the second. And then in the past, there's a lot of good players, but like some of the best ones, I can only say Pele is probably the most. He recently passed away about 2 months ago. Oh, right after the World Cup ended, he passed away in there. And like he's old. He was 82 when he passed. So he was in the World Cup. He won 1958, 1962, and 1970 for Brazil. So like all three those years, he won three World Cups for Brazil that during his career. And like that is impressive. And like he was widely regarded as the best player in the world, as the best player. Even Messi couldn't impale in comparison to him, any say. And like that's he was seen as like the best player in the world, and like he led the Brazil into a lot of World Cup wins and like that. And then Diego Maradona, he's the second one. He passed away 2 years ago, and he was for Argentina 1986 when Argentina won. That was the last time before this year that Argentina won the World Cup up, and like that is yeah, and he was again a very big player, and like scored some really legendary goals. One goal was very controversial. The other goal, he went past six defenders, and then went past the goalie and scored. That was one of the best goals they said in the entire history of the World Cup. So like that. And then the third is Zinedine Zidane in for France. He won the 1998 World Cup and nearly won the 2006 World Cup as well. for France, and this was before and like France became one of the most more competitive countries in World Cup. Even after he left, you see now France got a win afterwards, and like he was kind of like one of the major players for France that helped made France more of a football nation than many people may think it was before the time. So like because in was one of the best midfielders as well. He was often seen as the second best player overall in the world, only to Pele. So like that's another thing there. And then Ronaldo for Brazil. So like there's another Ronaldo for Portugal, and he was a very good player. However, in World Cup terms, he probably wasn't the best player in World Cup, but like he was a good player outside of World Cup, like for the club for his club teams and stuff. But Ronaldo for the Brazilian Ronaldo, he's now retired and he was seen as one of the best players as well. He won the 2002 World Cup for Brazil. Well, and like he was also scored a lot of goals for Brazil, and he was probably one of the best. And like Ronaldinho for Brazil is another great player as well that I couldn't put in this list. And there's so many others I could put in this list. But yeah, this is like the basic list of the world's best players. And like overall, this World Cup overall, it's a very interesting competition. It's very engaging to watch. And like, yeah, you see these good players and like all these good goals and like all these competitive matches between these countries. Has a lot of drama, everything. So like that is the premise there.
That's a brilliant collection of points, Richard. Following up with the presentation that you have made, why is India always having a nightmare in getting at least to the selection board of FIFA? And it has always been remaining its pipeline. And why India is not being able to get into the FIFA World Cup? What's your opinion?
It's just the lack of sports football organization in the country. But like many people love watching football there. Like I know, like I've been hearing of like temples for like Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo in the country. So like the love of football is there. Like many people like football in India. However, and like people even play it sometimes there. Like it's not as like cricket may be the top sport, but like football is also pretty important in India as well. Like you can still see people play it. However, the organization, especially among the higher divisions, are not good at all. So like that is like they're not like selecting the talent players. They're not finding your early talent. They're just like India has some really old players, I think, in the world right now. So like that is one major factor, and like it's just and like typically like it's like a rich like in many of these football players they were born poor. Like Lionel Messi wasn't rich. Pele was born so poor he couldn't even afford a soccer ball. Also, and like a lot of in India, even though it's progressing fast, there's still a lot of poverty in the country, and like it's not, and like the poverty is often an hindrance because India can own the talent is often only searched among the rich people. So like if you're rich and good at football, then you may be scouted by India. But like if you're poor, like India, the national team will not see you, and like you'll and thus the talent will be missed then. And like that is the thing. So like the football organization, like in other countries, it's amazing organization. You see the European countries, is and like you saw Croatia and like the Croatia, for example, it's a country of only 5 million people. Like that's like I'd say like 15 times less than the population of Tamil Nadu. And yet
Mm.
it's coming with these amazing players and like it's coming really close to winning these things. With India, it's now the most populous country in the world and it still couldn't do it. And it's like a lack of the organization. Like it's overall that.
Now, we have been speaking about cricket being the best, most sought after game for India. And these days, like the people, the millennials, the people who are born after 2000, 2003, the people, your peers, they are more attracted towards football. What could be the reason? There could possibly, research wise, there could be possibly three reasons for it. Reason number one, a teenager or a youngster wants the result of a game in just a span of 1 hour or 90 minutes or 95 minutes. And he does
Mm.
not want to wait for the whole day to get the result of the game. That could be possibly one reason. And reason number two, football has got more fugitive actions in nature. You got to run, you got to calculate, you got to, if you're a goalkeeper, you need to have a proper metrics and ergonomics with related to the D box and all that. And when you are a midfielder, you have to have tactics. So that game-based nuances, that's choice number two. And choice number three is it's a trend. When a kid is growing up, besides the fact that the kid likes sports like tennis or cricket or table tennis or basketball, just because of the trend, the person changes the mind and get leniently attracted towards football. Out of these three choices, which do you think is the appropriate choice for today's youngsters being so much attracted towards football rather than cricket?
So all those choices are valid, and like compared, I think the last point may have like a pretty good thing. We made a very good point of like how other sports, like it's just football, like peer pressure overall towards football, and like many people are liking it. However, the first point you make of like football being only an hour, and like I can expand on that, and like it's more, the rules are overall more simpler in football than like in cricket. Like cricket, like there's a lot of rules, and like you need to know how to bowl, how to bat, and like how to set the wickets. In football, you just set up two like goals, and then you just get a ball and you play. Like that's like the simplest part of football, and like many poor countries are able to come up with football. Oh, and like lots of poor people, because like football is it's more it's like a cheaper sport compared to like tennis, compared to like even cricket cannot be that cheap compared to it. Like it's just the ball you need, and like you just need to kick it, and like you can get it, and like that's like a, and like it's the similar trend in America when it comes to basketball. So like in the cities, like it's often poor and there's not a lot of space to ace
Mm,
play sports like tennis, cricket, baseball. They all require large fields, but basketball, you just need a hoop and like a small lot of road, and like you can play. So like that's like the major reason why urban cities are having really good basketball players, and like
mm,
that's why a lot of basketball players come from the urban city. Isn't that
mm,
so? Like it's just overall, like football is a lot simpler of a sport to like overall will play. And like if like and like it's also like watchable, like you said, it's only 90 minutes. Like you can watch it within a span of time, and like you'll still get the results, and it's still very entertaining. Like
mm,
cricket, like I've noticed, like I watched a couple of matches before. I just wait till like it gets to like the moment where it's actually detrimental, like whether like that. I just don't want to see people over hitting it and over and over again the same amount. Like football, there's always a little magic twist, and like it will always be. So like that's like the reason why.
that's totally right. And let's say, for example, if I'm your classmate and I see you playing soccer really well, and you are a predominant follower of Lionel Messi yourself, and I'm a predominant follower of Ronaldo, for instance. The case is not true, but for instance, and I get a little bit more motivated by looking at your football tactic, and we both start getting getting busy in playing football, and slowly our coaches, get noticed, and they start training us, and you get a zonal competition, I get a zonal competition, and then you move to district competition, I move to district competition,
Hmm.
and then slowly at the verge of getting into the state competition, your academic pressure and my academic pressure, and both of our parents prioritize academics, and they stop the game, and you just can't take the football out of a person, and you remain as an addict to football, and I remain as an addict to football, and both of our ways are parted, and we are concentrating on the academics. That's how good sports people are being curbed in India. Parents are not really coming to the level of encouraging their children to get into the sport for a national level competition. I see a lot of sports people getting killed internally, and they are put into their studies and they're put into the career aspirations. What do you think this is? Is this a very big challenge that has to be addressed, or parents have to take some calculated risk at some point of time to motivate more teenagers to get into sports? What's your take on this?
It's like a little bit of both. So parents definitely have done this before. Like they just kill people's things and like they just soccer things and make them focus on academics and like ultimately like some of their thing is justified because not every footballer is gonna go pro and make a lot of money like Messi or something. Not everyone's gonna be like that, but still, well, there's still a potential there. And right now in the US, for example, their colleges are they're not looking at academics as much anymore. You may get like a high GPA or like whatever like grade aid, and then like you may get high SAT score, which is like board exams in India. And you still you may not get into the college top college, and like they want more like they were looking for other stuff like whether you join a club or like sports, and mainly sports like you they want the sports as well. So like that's like one thing. And like USA, typically the policy is for sports people. Well, you can have sports people, they're a little lenient on grading. So instead of like a normal grade, you can get a little lower graded, but as long if you get that grade, you can still get a move up in the sports thing, and like you can go into college. Is and like colleges scout out specific sports player throughout this high school, and they get them and then like push them in. And like that's like one of the major things. Like college, like I've been hearing some of, even though I'm only in 11th grade and colleges won't start for another or year or so, they still like they're already scouting players and they're already making players commit to their colleges because like colleges want good players. And like that's like one of the things there. And like grade point average, and they're getting a little loose. And like India, that's just not the case. Like academics is much more prioritized, and that's the reason why India is not like progressing as much in sports as possible as
Right.
they could possible. Like and like score sports education in India is not there at all. Like there's no like I don't think there's only any gym class or physical education class. If there is, it's just recess time or like something where you just play outside in India. In the US, they've required that for elementary and middle school, and even high school, some of them they require it. So to make people more physical active and they can see which sports they're good at, and like they can progress further. Like it's just the organization problem we go to again in this thing. Like if you if you can scout the good players, and like you need to convince the parents that it's not a risky option, and like you have and it's not gonna be like that. Like money wise, he'll still be covered, and like he just needs to go to the special training academy. If you convince them that they're good, it's good enough. However, there's no organization of that to such give that confidence to parents that they will be good at football. It's just not
Mm.
there.
Mm. And the celebrated players, like right from Messi, if you take the metrics that you have presented, 2026 World Cup is going to host about 48 countries, and it is only going to get more magnum as time goes by. Even the logo of 1930 football was so funny, and it got emerged after 1960s. If you take 1980s after this, I mean, specifically after Pele's generation and then Maradona's generation, it got so much of wildfire, and people started celebrating the players. But the point is, I always wondered this point. Despite football being the most loved game all over the world, it has produced only less number of stars. Like take for an instance American football. Dwayne Johnson was a football player, and Chris Evans was a football player. Chris Hemsworth, Avengers series actors. All these people were basically football players. American football has created more celebrities and it has given more stars to the world. But That's not the point here. People playing as sports people and coming into the media attention. Well, I don't think that's a very big popularity, but remaining as a sports icon is the biggest popularity that one could look for. But if you take in football, soccer, international soccer, we got only handful of people. Your slide explained itself, like Brazilian Ronaldo, then Pele, then Maradona, and then we have got Mbappe and Messi, of course, right? Cristiano Ronaldo. Why only handful of people out of the game that is loved by millions of people? What is the analogy behind it, in your opinion?
That's a So like it depends on what frame you're looking at. It's like some frame, like if you look at an overall global picture, only a handful will exist because like they're only the special times of the special stars of the generation. Like they repeatedly showed themselves. Like it's not just like many players will have one tournament they're really good at. Like in 2022, like Morocco had a really good tournament and their players are good and like it may not be the same for 2026 and like
Yeah.
that's like the thing and like Messi however like he was in football since 2006 and like he was seen as a star from 2006 and in 2014 he almost led Argentina a win and then like in 2018 they narrowly lost to France and then in 2022 they obviously won so like Messi overall repeated himself throughout the time frame and like Mbappe, he has potential to do that as well. He got champion in 2018 and he is runner-up 2022. Like the future seems pretty good for him as well. He's gonna make like more tournaments and he's probably gonna win more awards and become like really good at the play. And like Pele, he won numerous World Cups like that. And like many
Mm.
players will have like one tournament and like those are often forgotten. However, you need to repeatedly continue like your success and like that's how to build on this. And that's why only a handful of people are there. Like if you go into like the level of only one tournament or even one match per se, then there's many stars there. Like many footballers are there. Like Ronaldo did really good in 2018 in one of the match, and yet he wasn't on the list because overall he wasn't in 2022. He was a lot as good. He was not as good in 2014. He was not a so he wasn't he was only good in 2018 in like one moment in 2010. So like it didn't make him as much of a football star as many people thought. But like Messi, he was there. He was pretty good in 2006. He was good in 2014. He helped Argentina survive until France in 2018 and then 2022 he just popped off like anything. So like that's like the thing. So like you just need to maintain a continuity of like really good football like
Right.
throughout the years, not just in one
Okay,
tournament.
that's right. I have one last question, but we'll close the window and open a new one, and we will have it as a culmination thing. But I think Zoom has changed its guidelines. Previously we used to wait for about 4 minutes for a new window to open, but now I
Yeah.
think they have changed it back again. I think instantly we can open a new window. So
All right,
we'll
so
meet in a new window. Yeah, right.
okay, so